Hi everyone, it's Alison from Prepare to Excel here. I've been asked to create a video tutorial that focuses on how Excel deals with a column containing numbers and text and how we can extract the numbers that we need from that column. So you can see in this scenario, let me zoom in a little bit for you here. We've got some raw data, could have been CSV'd in from a completely different system, but we're now in Excel with it to try and manipulate the data that we've been given. We've got some information where it's given us the hours and the minutes, somewhere there are no minutes to consider, somewhere there are no hours to consider. So we need to kind of focus on how we're going to extract the hours and the minutes into two separate columns. So ideally what I want to end up with is 10 in a column here, 45 in a column here, and then perhaps something like 10, 45 in column D, which I'll use a function for. So it's kind of figuring out the best way to do this. There are lots and lots of different ways in Excel that you can manipulate that information, and you could focus on trying to use the data tab, converting text to columns with the delimiter based on the fact that you've got some spaces. You could use the value function with a mid function and a search function. That's hugely convoluted. It's not one that I'm keen on, but it is one that works. You could try and use flash fill, which is the example I'm going to focus on today. My favorite method would probably be using Power Query, but I'm going to do that in a separate video for you because it is something that's a little bit more future-proof than the method we're about to examine. So this method uses flash fill. What I am going to start with is converting my data into a table because it is something that I'm a fan of. I do like working with tables in Excel. So you can use the Home tab and then you can format as table. This method lets you choose the color from the offset. You could click on the data, choose Insert Table, or you could just use Control and T. You'll get a little message that confirms you are creating a table. Make sure that you're eyeballing which kind of cell reference range that it's allowed you to choose. Just make sure that's correct every time. Just eyeball that and double check it. This will always be ticked by default to just confirm that your first row does describe the contents of each and every column. Click OK to this option. If you're not a fan of the colors, you can go ahead and use that table design contextual menu to change that color to something you're happier with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to type hours 1. And I'm going to focus on just extracting the hours. Now, this isn't going to work in our favor if I just ask for 10, because using flash fill, you've got to give Excel a bit of a clue. The clue here is that the hours in row 2 are 10. If I use flash fill now, you'll see that I'll get the 8. That's grand. The 5 and the 5 is great, but I've also got 8. Now that's in my hours column when actually that's minutes. So Excel's not playing nicely with flash fill initially. So what I'm going to choose to do is I'm just going to play about with this, which is what I did before I started the video. I just played about. It's always my favorite way of experimenting with Excel is just messing about with see what happens if I do this, see what happens if I do that. So I'm going to put 10 hours. I'm going to be a bit more specific with my flash fill than just popping a number. Let's see what it does here. Now this time it's pulled through 10 hours, 8 hours, that looks brilliant. This is all great. And even here, that's not too bad. So where there was something to do with minutes, rather than displaying the word hours, it's pulled through the fact that this isn't hours, this is minutes. This actually makes my filter a little bit easier to decipher where Excel's gone wrong. So my filter clearly shows that I've got some that are displaying hours information and some where it's displaying minutes where technically that can go, that can be deleted. Okay, let's focus on how we would do that straight away from the offset. I think that's what I'm going to plan to do. So there's a couple of different ways that you can delete this information. You could just kind of go, well, I'll just like to pull through anything that says minutes, and then you could just grab it and delete it. The other method that you could use that I quite like is highlighting the entire column, because basically anytime Excel's pulled through anything that's got minutes in it, so I've got one here, I've got any others, they're all 8. I should have kind of played about with that a little bit, but that'll be fine. Grab that entire column, highlight that entire column and use Control and F, which is basically your find and replace functionality. Just going to move that out of the way. Now, as you can see, I've played about with this already, but for argument's sake, let's pretend that came up with nothing. And it is replace that we want to make use of. So when we're asking Excel to find what, it's not going to be enough to just say, I want to find anything that contains the word minutes, okay? Because if I ask Excel now, if I just go into find and use find all, it will find the two that say 8 minutes, but actually what I want to replace is the minute that comes with it. So where it says 8, then space, then minutes, I can actually represent that 8 or any value in this instance. It might be 6 minutes, it might be 5 minutes, it might be 25 minutes. If I use an asterisk, okay, not only is it going to find the word minutes, it's going to find any value beforehand. So this means that that entire scenario of any minutes with the space, because your asterisk represents more than one character, it's going to replace that with absolutely nothing, okay? So if I said to Excel now, replace, can you see how it's took away the minute as well? Which is great, that's what I want. I don't want anything to be displayed in that hours that has minutes in it. In column B, I only want to see anything that has hours in it. So I'm going to replace again. Oh, not there. Hang on a minute. That went completely wrong. Let me just undo. Let's try this again, because I should be able to make use of replace all for just column B. Yeah, I went wrong there. I'm going to use replace all. I'm going to trust Excel. It's found 2 replacements. I didn't want it to venture into column A. I don't want it to touch my raw data. So now what it's done is it's removed anything in here that had minutes in it. There's the other one that had minutes in it. There weren't any others. So I know that in this instance, there aren't very many values, but the beauty of this is if there were more that said, for example, 25 minutes, 7 minutes, 43 minutes, they'd just disappear. Just using that one find and replace functionality, they would disappear. Now, in this one, I'm going to put hours too, because what I should be able to do now is pop that 10 in. I'm kind of figuring that this might go a little bit wrong. Just bear with me here. Keep your fingers crossed for me. And I'm going to use Control and E, which is my flash fill. Yeah, it did. There's a few there that I didn't want it to find. Let's not do that yet. Let's practice doing minutes. Let's pull through the minutes information. So where in column B, we've just pulled through the hours information based on the raw data. Here, I want to pull through the minutes information based on the raw data. So I've given Excel a clue. I know that for row 2, it should pull through 45 minutes. And then I'm going to use flash fill. Now I'm going to get the same problem because obviously there are some that it's going to pull through hours information. I'm going to use exactly the same methodology for column C using find and replace to just say to Excel, if you come across anything in column C that has anything to do with the word hours in, just replace it with absolutely nothing. So I'm going to choose replace all. It's found 16 occurrences where you can see here, there are no minutes to consider. They've been removed. Here, there are no minutes to consider. So the hours that were in here that were wrong have been removed very quickly. So we'll close that. Now this is brilliant. Now what I've got now is 2 columns that clearly have split the hours and the minutes. I'm not got exactly what I want yet, but I'm now in a position to delete this raw data. Now, I wouldn't normally encourage people to delete raw data, but what I actually want to do is just detach it from B and C. It's a little bit convoluted, this method. Bear with me. Grab that out the way. Just go away for a second, please, raw data. I don't want to see you. And I don't need this column here anymore, this empty one. Now, what I should get now is if I go for hours, keep everything crossed for me here. Hours 2, I'm going to call it. If I ask for 10, and I go Control and E. Oh, that's magic. That's exactly what I was hoping it would do. I was a bit worried it would go wrong again, but we have the gods are shining on us today. So it has pulled through just a number to represent the hours. And where there was nothing in the minutes, it's ignored it. It's still pulling through just the hours information. Now, with a bit of luck, And again, keep everything. Oh, I might not be lucky if I put it here. I feel like it should go there next door. Let's just mess about with minutes too. If I ask for 45, because I'm giving it a clue, and I control and E that, yeah, fantastic. That's great. Would it have been kind to me? I can't help but wonder if I'd have asked for it in here, given it a clue there and control and E. Oh, it would have been kind. It would have been kind. I was a little bit worried that this minutes column for 2 was too far away from this one here, and it would start to look at this column here. Flash fill can be a little bit unpredictable at times. So flash fills worked in our favour though. We've definitely been lucky there. That's exactly what I was hoping it would do. And I can see by eye, checking them, that they've done exactly what I was hoping they'd do. Flash fill has worked really nicely for us there. So what I'm going to do now is delete these two. They're obsolete, they're redundant. I've got exactly what I want from these two columns here. So I'm going to delete column A and B. I can now get rid of that 2 that's appeared there. Oh, yeah, that's right. And delete that 2 there. So we've got hours and minutes. Still got my raw data. I've not done any sorting. So even though they're detached from each other, they're still, everything's in the correct column. And I could, for argument's sake, add that back in. Just stretch that across, because sometimes it's quite useful to keep that raw data. You could hide it, you don't really need it, but it's useful to just hang on to it, because it means that you've always got some sort of reference to be able to say, no, that's right, it's fine. I haven't done anything weird or wonderful, and Excel hasn't done anything weird or wonderful with it. What I also want is the time. Now, rather than just having hours and minutes in 2 separate columns, what you can now do, because you've got hours and minutes in 2 separate columns, is pull in a time function. So time function looks like this: 3 different arguments. What's the hour? What's the minute? What's the second? So straight away, we can rely on a cell reference. We know that the hours are contained in A2. We can build in a comma so that we're forcing it to consider the next argument, which is minute. We've got that there as well. Then if you build in a comma, we haven't got the seconds. The seconds are actually 0 for each and every row that we've got here. So we can just pop a 0 in there manually. And then we can close that function with a closed bracket. Press enter, automatic autofill because we're in a table. Highlight column D because this doesn't look quite as promising. I don't need AM and PM. That's not really very useful for me. I could pop in here and I could say this is time information. That would do a lovely quick job for me actually, because I can now see the hours, the minutes and the time displayed beautifully, nice and easy to see. But what you could also do, if you go and you launch the number format dialog box, format cells rather, you can pop into, I would go for this one. I would go for that second one off the list. Go into custom and get rid of the seconds. You don't need that sign either. And what you could also do, just on the off chance that some of the hours that you're working with start to run over 24. Now, they're not going to for each and every row that we've got here. They don't run over 24. But adding the square brackets in just covers your back when you do the sum underneath. Because remember, you've got hold of that entire column D, which means that when you build in that sum function at the bottom and say it goes over 24 hours, which it's likely to, you want Excel to be able to get to midnight, so get to the end of the day, but then continue counting. So for example, Excel's really awkward with time, and if it goes past midnight, it automatically starts from 0 again. So if you're adding up something that adds up to 25 hours, Excel will, unless you've got that square bracket around the H's, Excel will treat it as 1 in the morning again. It's really weird, but your square brackets just say to Excel, I want to run over 24 hours and keep counting. So if I click OK to this, I'll remove my seconds. I've got no over 24 hours to worry about until I go into my table design, ask for a total row. This weird thing is telling me that it's 29, which makes no sense whatsoever for the data above, but that's because weirdly, it's trying to count how many of them there are. What we wanted to do is a sum function. And there you go. So because you've got your square brackets around your H, you've allowed Excel to go past 24, which 24 midnight. So it's kept on counting, and there are 177 hours and 16 minutes in all of that data above. So that's all I wanted to go through on this particular scenario. I hope that was useful.